November 15, 1943. Imperial Japanese Naval Headquarters, Tokyo. The dim glow of a single desk lamp cuts through the haze of cigarette smoke, casting long shadows across maps of the Pacific that now feel like fragile illusions. Admiral Mineichi Koga, successor to the fallen Yamamoto, slumps in his chair, the weight of the empire pressing down like the humid air outside. His fingers tremble as he flips through a folder stamped with the Imperial Chrysanthemum seal, intercepted reports from neutral ports, whispers from spies in Manila, and fragmented radio chatter that defies everything he's been taught to believe. You can almost hear the distant rumble of factory forges across the ocean, feel the vibration of steel being hammered into something monstrous. Koga's eyes widen at the sketches, a battleship longer than their prized Yamato, sleeker, faster, with guns that promise death from horizons unseen. Impossible, he whispers to the empty room, his voice echoing off the wooden panels, but the numbers stare back. 33 knots, 9 16-inch guns, radar that pierces night like a samurai's gaze, the Iowa class, America's answer to Japan's dreams of naval supremacy. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Back in the 1930s, when the Imperial Navy forged its Kantai-Kessen doctrine, the sacred belief in one decisive battle to shatter the enemy fleet, Japan had bet everything on quality over quantity. Their engineers, under the veil of utmost secrecy, birthed the Yamato and Musashi, behemoths at 72,000 tons, armed with 18.1-inch guns that could hurl shells weighing as much as a small car over 25 miles. Each ship was a floating fortress, designed to take on multiple American vessels alone. Why? Because Japan knew the truth buried in the statistics. America's industrial might dwarfed theirs, 32% of global production to Japan's meager 3.5. They couldn't outbuild the Yankees, so they aimed to outgun them, out-armor them, infuse each rivet with the unyielding spirit of Bushido. Admiral Osami Nagano, the Navy's iron-willed chief, had sneered at American designs during those pre-war years. Their battleships are treaty-bound relics, he'd declare in smoke-filled strategy sessions aboard the Nagato. The Washington Naval Treaty had capped U.S. ships at 35,000 tons and 16-inch guns, limits Japan had secretly shattered. Nagano's staff nodded in agreement, their minds steeped in racial certainties. Americans were soft, their democracy a chaotic mess of immigrants and capitalists, lacking the disciplined purity of the Japanese warrior. They build automobiles and refrigerators, Nagano would laugh, not warships forged in the fire of imperial will. But whispers of doubt had crept in even then. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the brilliant mind behind Pearl Harbor, had lived in America, studied at Harvard, seen the sprawl of Detroit's factories. In private letters to friends, he'd confessed his fears. In the first 6 to 12 months of a war with the United States and Great Britain, I will run wild and win victory upon victory. But then, if the war continues after that, I have no expectation of success. He knew the giant could awaken, its shipyards churning out vessels like an unstoppable tide. But the high command dismissed him as overly cautious, clinging to the dream of that one glorious clash where Yamato's massive turrets would roar and silence the Pacific forever. As Koga pores over the 1943 reports, those doubts solidify into terror. Agents in Mexico City, posing as businessmen, had overheard U.S. executives boasting at dimly lit receptions. The Iowa's a greyhound of the sea, 887 feet long, slicing through waves at speeds our enemies can't dream of. Intercepted manifests from Newport News shipbuilding detail aluminum shipments vast enough to armor an armada. German U-boat commanders, allies in a fragile pact, radioed sightings. These new American monsters outgun our Bismarck and vanish into the horizon like ghosts. Koga slams the folder shut, his heart pounding. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Pozawa enters, face pale as rice paper. Admiral, if these are true, he trails off, the implication hanging like a noose. The Iowa class wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of everything Japan had underestimated. The relentless Yankee ingenuity, the radar that turned night into day, the mass production that mocked Japan's artisanal precision. Yamato was bigger, yes, but slower, a lumbering titan in an era where speed and technology reigned. Outside, Tokyo's blackout curtains hide the city from bombers that grow bolder by the day. Koga stands, gazing at the darkened skyline. How could they have been so blind? The doctrine that promised victory now feels like a trap. And as reports of more Iowas launching filter in, New Jersey, Missouri, Wisconsin, the admiral wonders, is this the beginning of the end or just the storm's first gust? But deeper intelligence is coming, whispers from captured pilots and shadowed diplomats that will shatter illusions further. What did the Japanese sailors truly think when they first glimpsed these American leviathans on the horizon? November 13th, 1942. Midnight blackness cloaks iron-bottom sound off Guadalcanal, broken only by the searing white flashes of 14-inch shells ripping through the humid night. Tracers arc like angry fireflies as Japanese destroyers weave desperately, searchlights stabbing the darkness. The air reeks of burnt powder and diesel, screams echoing across the water as hulls crumple under direct hits. Aboard the battleship Hiei, Admiral Hiroaki Abe grips the bridge rail, his knuckles white against the vibration of secondary batteries thundering in defiance. Radar? The Americans have it. Ghostly warnings of enemy ships closing unseen. Japanese lookouts strain with binoculars, relying on eyes and star shells, but it's too late. The USS Washington's radar-directed 16-inch salvos slam home with surgical precision, turning Hiei's pagoda mast into twisted steel. Fires rage below decks, the pride of the fleet listing helplessly. You can feel the shock rippling through the Japanese force. These weren't the slow, blind battleships of Pearl Harbor legend. These Americans fought dirty, striking from the shadows with machines that saw what human eyes could not. Back in Truck Lagoon, where Yamato swings at anchor like a caged emperor, the news hits hard. Captain Tameichi Hara, a destroyer veteran, pores over after-action reports in the dim light of his cabin. Their gunnery, impossible, he mutters to his executive officer. In the chaotic night actions around Guadalcanal, the Friday the 13th battle, the cruiser clashes, American ships repeatedly landed first salvos, turning Japanese advantages in torpedoes and night training into bloody routs. The doctrine crumbles here in the jungle-choked Solomon Islands. Yamato and Musashi, the ultimate expressions of Kantai Kessen, sit idle thousands of miles away, their massive fuel thirst too precious to risk. Instead, admirals send Tokyo Express runs, destroyers and cruisers dashing supplies under cover of darkness. But American radar changes everything. South Dakota, Washington, old but upgraded with fire control radar, punch above their weight, proving technology could trump raw power. Lower deck whispers spread among crews. Sailors who trained for years on optical rangefinders now question, how do you fight an enemy who sees you first? One petty officer aboard Congo, after bombarding Henderson Field, confides in his diary, "The Americans' new ships are fast and accurate. Our great Yamato is mighty, but slow like a mountain. If we meet their new battleships..." Intelligence briefs filter in during these months. The USS Iowa commissions in February 1943, her sisters following rapidly. Photos smuggled via neutral ports show her sleek lines, 887 feet of menace, triple 16-inch turrets, a bow slicing waves at 33 knots. Faster than any Japanese capital ship, able to dictate engagement range while screening carriers. Commander Toshikazu Omai, back in Tokyo analyzing reports, confronts superiors in a tense headquarters meeting. Faces stern under peaked caps, maps strewn across the table. "Gentlemen," Omai says, voice steady but eyes betraying urgency. "The Iowa class outruns our battle line, outranges us with radar fire control. Yamato's guns are larger, yes, but she cannot close without being pummeled first." Laughter, dismissal. "American haste produces flaws," one vice admiral retorts. "Their crews, women welding, Negroes riveting, lack precision." Racial certainty blinds them still. Yamato remains the divine weapon, her 18.1-inch shells capable of plunging through any deck armor at range. But Omai knows better. He's seen American shipyards in peacetime, the relentless assembly lines. Guadalcanal's night horrors are just the prelude. As fuel shortages bite and carriers dwindle, the Imperial Navy edges towards reckoning. And in the coming year, as American fast battleships begin escorting carriers deeper into Japanese waters, the true terror will reveal itself, not in one decisive clash, but in overwhelming, relentless dominance. What happens when Yamato finally sorties, only to face enemies she cannot catch or outsea? February 22, 1943, New York Navy Yard, Brooklyn. A biting winter wind whips across the frozen Hudson as thousands crowd the docks, flags snapping sharply in the gusts. The massive gray hull of the USS Iowa looms like a steel cliff, her 9 16-inch guns pointed skyward in silent salute. Champagne shatters against her bow, and cheers erupt as she slides into commission, 58,000 tons of American fury officially joining the fleet. Half a world away, in the shadowed corridors of Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters in Tokyo, the news arrives like a cold blade. Admiral Minechi Koga, his uniform crisp despite the strain etching his face, spreads fresh intelligence reports across the polished table. Dim lanterns flicker, casting uneasy glows on the faces of his staff. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, Captain Matome Ugaki, and the ever-cautious Commander Toshikazu Omai. You can sense the tension thickening the air, thick as the incense from nearby shrines. Smuggled photographs from neutral ports show the Iowa at full steam, her sleek lines cutting waves at 33 knots, a speed that mocks the plodding majesty of Yamato. Manifests intercepted via Spanish diplomats detail her armor. Built plating sloped for maximum deflection, underwater protection that shrugs off torpedoes like rain, and the radar, Mark 8 fire control, guiding shells with eerie precision through storm or darkness. Omai leans forward, voice low but urgent. Admiral, 17 independent sources now confirm it. The Americans aren't just building one, they have 4 Iowa-class underway. Iowa commissioned today, New Jersey launching soon, Missouri and Wisconsin following. Their shipyards churn them out like automobiles, modular sections welded nationwide. Koga's eyes narrow, tracing the sketches. Agents in Mexico had cultivated loose-tongued U.S. executives over sake and tequila. We broke the battleship into sub-assemblies, wings from one factory, turrets from another, women and minorities on the lines working shifts around the clock. Precision through repetition, not artisanal skill. German U-boat sightings corroborate. These greyhounds escort convoys, outrunning our shadows. Ozawa shifts uncomfortably. But Yamato's guns, 18.1 inches, one hit could cripple them. Omai shakes his head. They won't let us close. Speed dictates range. Radar strikes first. In night or poor visibility, we're blind. They see everything. The room falls silent. Racial doctrines that once fortified their confidence now ring hollow. Mass production by inferiors, mutters one staff officer, clinging to old certainties. Yet the evidence piles higher. Captured American pilots in Rabaul, interrogated under harsh lights, speak with reluctant admiration. Your Yamato's big, all right, but our Iowas, they run circles around anything, guns hitting targets we can't even spot. Koga arises, pacing to the window overlooking Tokyo's darkened streets. Guadalcanal's losses still burn fresh, radar turning night battles into slaughters. Now these fast battleships promise to screen carriers, extending American air power deeper into imperial waters. The Kantai Keisen dream fades further, no longer a single glorious duel, but a grinding war of attrition Japan cannot win. He turns back, voice steel. Prepare briefings for the Emperor. We must shift doctrine, preserve Yamato for the decisive moment. But in his heart, doubt gnaws.
The flood of evidence is undeniable. America's industrial miracle has birthed predators perfectly suited to the carrier age. And as the Marianas loom on the horizon, with American task forces growing bolder, the Imperial Navy braces for the storm. What will happen when Japanese pilots first tangle with carriers guarded by these untouchable greyhounds?
June 19, 1944. Dawn over the Philippine Sea, the vast blue expanse shimmering under a merciless tropical sun. Aboard the carrier Taiho, flagship of Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's mobile fleet, the bridge hums with focused tension. Ozawa, tall and gaunt, peers through binoculars at the horizon, his face a mask of calculated calm. Decks below, pilots in flight suits bow to their Zero fighters and Judy dive bombers, engines coughing to life in a symphony of war. 400 aircraft, Japan's last great carrier strike, launch in waves, arrowing toward the reported American position. You can almost taste the salt spray whipping across the flight decks, feel the deck tremble under catapult launches. Ozawa's plan is bold. Shuttle attacks from longer range, using the float planes to spot. But deep down, his staff knows the odds. Japanese pilot training has withered, new flyers with mere months of experience against America's battle-hardened aces. And guarding the American carriers, the fast battleships, Iowa's leading rings of steel that bristle with radar-directed anti-aircraft guns. The first wave crests the horizon and walks into hell. American F-6F Hellcats, vectored by radar pickets, pounce from altitude. The sky erupts in chaos, tracers stitching the air, Zeros spiraling down in flames, pilots bailing into the endless sea. One Japanese squadron leader radios frantically, enemy fighters everywhere, superior speed, superior numbers. Over 200 planes vanish in hours, shot down like turkeys in a hunt. Back on Taiho, Ozawa listens to the crackling reports, his expression unchanging. But inside, the truth hits like a torpedo. The American battleships aren't just escorting, they're enabling. Iowa and her sisters form an impenetrable screen, their 5-inch and 40mm batteries guided by Mark 37 directors, shredding attackers long before they reach the carriers. Speed allows them to maneuver with the fleet, radar painting the sky in invisible webs. A young signals officer whispers to a comrade, "Those greyhounds, they protect the flat tops perfectly. Our pilots can't get through." Returning survivors, pale and shaken, describe the wall. The battleship's fire, automatic, endless, shells bursting in black clouds, guided by demons. Ozawa orders more launches. Wave after wave meets the same fate. By dusk, the great Marianas Turkey Shoot claims nearly 300 Japanese aircraft for minimal American losses. Carriers like Taiho and Shokaku fall to submarines lurking beyond the screen, but the battleships remain untouchable. In the quiet aftermath aboard Zuikaku, one of Ozawa's last carriers, pilots gather in the ready room. A veteran ace, voice hoarse, "We thought Yamato's might would decide the war, but these fast battleships, they make our carriers vulnerable, extend their reach. Spirit alone can't pierce that radar veil." The Imperial Navy's air arm is gutted. Saipan falls soon after, bringing B-29s within range of the home islands. Ozawa reports to Tokyo, losses catastrophic, but he omits the deeper wound, the realization that battleship supremacy has flipped. America's Iowas aren't just bigger guns, they're the perfect guardians in a carrier-dominated world. And as the fleet limps home, fuel critically low, Yamato still anchored uselessly in home waters, the admirals face the inevitable. The next battle, Leyte Gulf, will be the last desperate throw, where Yamato finally sails, only to confront the full might of those untouchable American predators. October 24th, 1944. The Sibuyan Sea churns under a leaden sky as waves of American carrier aircraft descend like avenging hornets. Aboard the super battleship Musashi, Admiral Takeo Kurita stands on the open bridge, wind whipping his uniform as the first bombs scream down. Explosions bloom across her massive deck, torpedoes tearing into her bowels, fires raging amidships. Crewmen scramble with hoses, faces blackened by smoke, shouting orders lost in the roar. You can feel the deck shudder beneath Kurita's feet, each hit a hammer blow to Imperial pride. Musashi, sister to Yamato, absorbs punishment meant for an entire fleet. 19 torpedoes, 17 bombs, yet she steams on, her 18.1-inch guns silent against enemies in the clouds. Lookouts shout warnings, more planes, Hellcats and Helldivers swarming from carriers screened by those elusive Iowa-class shadows. Kurita's center force, the hammer meant to smash MacArthur's landings at Leyte, presses forward. Yamato leads now, her pagoda mast towering like a defiant relic, but the air belongs to America. No decisive surface clash, just relentless skies pouring death. Musashi finally rolls, her bow plunging, thousands trapped below as she vanishes into the depths. Survivors cling to wreckage, whispering in awe and horror. The gods have abandoned us, air power, unstoppable. Kurita signals retreat temporarily, then resumes, driven by duty, haunted by the sight of Musashi's end. In the fleet's wardrooms that night, officers gather under dim lights. A young captain voices what many think. We built these giants for the great gun duel, but where are the American battleships, hiding behind carriers, letting planes do their fighting? Another nods grimly. The Iowas, they escort from afar, fast enough to evade us, radar guiding their strikes. Yamato is mighty, but alone against the sky. The force slips through San Bernardino Strait under cover of darkness, undetected. Dawn on October 25th brings surprise. Off Samar, Kurita's battleships stumble upon Taffy 3, light escort carriers, destroyers and destroyer escorts guarding the invasion beaches. Yamato's massive turrets train, shells splashing around fleeing jeep carriers. American destroyers charge heroically, laying smoke, torpedoes streaking. Kurita, believing he's facing the main fleet, with Iowas lurking, hesitates, then turns away. The decisive moment slips. No annihilation. Taffy 3 survives through sheer audacity. In Yamato's flag quarters, Kurita confides to his chief of staff, "I thought they were fleet carriers screened by fast battleships. Those greyhounds, if they'd closed, our superiority might have held. But they dictate the terms now." The truth dawns bitterly. The Iowas aren't needed here. Air power and speed have rendered the old doctrine obsolete. As the force withdraws, pursued by more planes, the sailors manning Yamato's anti-aircraft batteries fire desperately. One gunner pauses between bursts. "We feared their battleships once. Now they're ghosts, protecting the carriers that truly rule the sea." Leyte Gulf ends in catastrophe for Japan. Carriers gone, surface fleet shattered. Yamato limps home, her crew silent. The dream of battleship supremacy dies not in thunderous broadsides, but in flames from above and shadows below. Yet one final suicidal sortie awaits, the ultimate test against the American tide. Will Yamato's last voyage force the confrontation Japan always craved?
April 6, 1945. Kure Naval Base, Japan. The morning mist clings to the inland sea like a shroud as the super battleship Yamato weighs anchor for the last time. Her decks swarm with activity, sailors in crisp whites lining the rails, faces set in grim determination. Admiral Seiichi Ito stands on the towering bridge, the weight of imperial orders pressing heavier than the 72,000 tons of steel beneath his feet. Operation Tengo, a one-way voyage to Okinawa, to beach Yamato on the invasion shores and fight as a shore battery until the end. No air cover, minimal escorts, fuel for the outbound journey only. You can almost hear the low thrum of her turbines, feel the deck vibrate as she gathers way, leaving the safety of home waters forever. Crewmen whisper among themselves below decks. Some clutch family photographs, others write final letters. A young ensign murmurs to his gun captain, "We are the divine wind now. Yamato will save the emperor." But older hands, veterans of Leyte and the Marianas, exchange knowing glances. They have seen the American tide. They know what awaits. Ito addresses the crew over the intercom, voice steady. "Our mission is to strike the enemy at Okinawa and die gloriously. Let each man fight with the spirit of Yamato Damashi." Cheers rise, fierce and defiant. Yet in private, Ito confides to his chief of staff, "This is no longer strategy, it is sacrifice." The high command in Tokyo, stripped of carriers and air power, clings to one last illusion, that Yamato's mere presence might inspire a miracle, force the Americans to commit their battleships to the gun duel Japan always dreamed of. But the Americans have no intention of obliging. Task Force 58, under Admiral Mark Mitcher, steams nearby. 11 carriers, screened by the fast battleships that have haunted Japanese nightmares. Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri, Wisconsin, greyhounds circling with lethal patience, their radar masts sweeping the sky. April 7th dawns clear and cruel. American scout planes spot the force at midday. Hundreds of Hellcats, Helldivers, Avengers lift off in coordinated waves, over 380 aircraft converging like a storm. Yamato's lookouts shout the warning, enemy planes, massive numbers. Anti-aircraft batteries open up, black bursts dotting the sky, but the volume is overwhelming. Torpedoes slam into her port side first, 1, 2, 10. Flooding compartments faster than damage control can counter. Bombs rake her decks, silencing secondary guns, igniting ready ammunition. Fires rage unchecked. Ito remains on the bridge, calm in the inferno, refusing to leave his post. A sailor below, knee-deep in rising water, cries out, "Where are their battleships? Why do they not come to fight us honorably?" The answer is simple and devastating. The Iowas and their escorts steam just over the horizon, radars tracking every move, but they never close. Why risk a surface duel when air power can finish the job from beyond reach? Yamato, the ultimate battleship, dies not to enemy broadsides, but to the very future the Japanese refuse to embrace. Carrier aviation protected by fast, radar-equipped guardians. After 7 hours of relentless assault, Yamato lists heavily. Her magazine detonates in a cataclysmic explosion visible for miles, a fireball rising thousands of feet, shockwave rippling the sea. Only 280 of her 3,332 crew survive. The divine wind scatters into the depths. In the aftermath, aboard the USS Iowa, American sailors watch the distant mushroom cloud. One radar operator remarks, "That's the end of the big gun era." No celebration, just quiet recognition that the war at sea has been decided not by size or spirit, but by innovation, industry, and the cold mathematics of overwhelming power. The myth is shattered forever. Yamato, symbol of imperial invincibility, lies broken on the seabed, never having fired her mighty guns at an American battleship in anger. The Japanese had feared the wrong enemy, not the Iowa's shells, but the skies she enabled.